Hi, everyone. Happy 2026 to you. For those of you who don't know me and who are new here, I'm Christy in Coimbra. My name is Christy Peters. I am a real estate professional here in Portugal. I'm an American who moved abroad from the US to Portugal 3 years ago, and I practice real estate here. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of my background if you're new. I have been a licensed real estate broker in the US for over 20 years. I started my career in commercial real estate. I also had a very successful general contracting company. I was a licensed general contractor in the States as well. So when I say I'm a real estate professional, I mean that in every sense of the word. And so I'm doing this video today on New Year's Day. In my pajamas, even though it doesn't look like it from this virtual background. But I am fulfilling a promise I made to myself and to some of you to make more content in the new year regarding the Portuguese real estate market, how I moved abroad, etc. So today I want to talk to those of you who are leasing, and I'm specifically talking to those who are looking for leases for the purpose of their visa appointment for having the residency here. And so if you are looking to rent an apartment or a home here, there are a few things that you should know and you should be looking for if you're not going to hire a real estate professional to guide you or to advocate on your behalf. I highly recommend having a professional, but if you decide to not go that route, again, these are some tools I'd like you to have in your tool bag so that you can make an informed decision about where you're going to live. So, if you are evaluating the process of moving abroad, obviously, you know, for the purpose of your visa for the D7, for most of the visas in Portugal, you will need to have proof of 12 months of accommodations. And so, for most people, instead of purchasing a place, that typically looks like having a lease contract. And so, if you're going to lease, there are a few things you should ask for. While you're negotiating your lease, you should be asking the landlord or the landlord's agent for the Caderneta Predial. And so, the Caderneta is pretty much a property card that is registered with the tax authority in your municipality. And what that card will do is verify who the owner is, the location, address of the property, aspects about the property, its age, its size, etc. So you're going to use that as just a verification tool that the person you are negotiating with actually has the power to enter into a contract with you by being the listed owner on that caderneta. If there's a discrepancy with that, you need to be inquiring about that. Next, I would suggest you always ask for the energy certificate. Here it's known as the Certificado Energético. And so the energy certificate is graded for anywhere from A to F. It's issued by the energy authority here. And so a property owner hires an engineer, and the engineer comes and they evaluate the building and they grade it based on several factors from A to F. A obviously being the best, F being a failing grade, basically. And so when the engineer comes, they evaluate things like the heating and air system or the lack thereof. They evaluate building materials, the sun exposure. They evaluate the ventilation systems. And it's just basically to rate how energy efficient that apartment is. And so anything below a C probably is not something that most Americans would want to deal with. That doesn't mean it's going to have mold. I know that people automatically think that. Sometimes, yes, that more times probably than not, that is the case, but not every time. And so you would ideally look for something that's an A or a B if you want to be sure to be comfortable and have heating systems or air conditioning in the summer, but also for the sake of ventilation to handle the airflow. I was also a certified mold remediation specialist in the States, so I'm well aware of what can happen when you have moisture issues. So you want to be looking and evaluating your new place for those things. Also, sometimes here you will be asked to provide a fiador, and a fiador is basically a guarantor. It's a financial guarantor, someone who says, in case you default on your obligation to meet your rent every month, that this person will be responsible for you. And so it would be the equivalent, I think, for us as a co-signer. And that's because things here in Portugal don't work the way they do in the States. In the States, when you go to obtain a lease, you typically pay an application fee, they run a background check and a credit check. They don't do that here. You're not going to pay an application fee. What they're going to ask you for are proof of your financial situation. So that may mean your most recent tax return. That may mean proof of your employment, such as a contract. If you're self-employed, they would want to see probably your certificate of incorporation and whatever entity issues that to you. Also, your most recent bank statements, probably for the past 6 months at least, just depending on the owner and their evaluation criteria. But understand, if you don't have a Fiador, they're going to ask you for probably more advance rent and more security deposit. Here they call it a caution, causal. So you might pay 3 months of security deposit. You might pay 2 or 3 months of advance rent if you are an extranjero, a foreigner without a Fiador. So these are just some things that work differently for us. And I actually like it better than people who have to pay $50 and $100 every time they're applying to an apartment only to be denied. It makes sense that they want to be sure by looking at your tax return or your proof of bank statements that you can financially provide for yourself and meet the rent obligation. So I actually think it's a fair system, but it can be jarring for us to give that information, all of your financial information to a person or an entity that you've never met before. But that's how it works here. So let me know if there's questions you have about the rental process or the buying process. I'm happy to answer those for you. I would also advise people, if you have any mobility issues or if you have a loved one who will be with you who utilizes a wheelchair or something of that nature, be aware that many of the buildings here are not accessibility friendly depending on their age. So there's not ADA requirements here. So you may have a building that is perfect, but it has no wheelchair access, no ramp to get the person, either you or anyone else who's not as ambulatory as some of us, they may not have the accommodation for them. Some buildings here don't have an elevator. So you have to really be asking those things. Have a criteria and a checklist that will help your real estate advisor to be able to ask the questions and address the issues that we may not always think about, that may not be top of mind. But these are things that you should be using to evaluate any place that you're potentially going to live in for a year or 3 years or 5 years. So that's my New Year's spiel for the day about renting. If you have any questions about any of that, please let me know. I'm happy to answer the questions. But the Portuguese real estate market is great. There's a place for everyone here. If you like the beach, there's the beach. If you like the mountains, there's the mountains. If you are okay with hills, of course, we have hilly cities. If you need flat areas, there are plenty of flat areas. Don't let the hills of Lisbon, the infamous hills of Lisbon, deter you. There are plenty of municipalities that are more accommodating if you have issues with inclines and things of that nature. So again, drop a comment. Let me know if any of this was confusing or if you want some clarity around anything that I've spoken about. And I look forward to assisting you in the new year. I'm wishing you much peace, much prosperity, much joy. Let's all pray for peace around the world and do our part to make that happen. Okay, ciao, ciao. Till the next time.